Hey, this is Middle-Aged Nerd Seek Genre. I'm Cody. Welcome back to the channel. So in this video, we're going to be talking about nonfiction for horror fans. If you are looking for spooky or spooky adjacent stories, but true, I've got 4 books that you definitely want to check out and add to your bookshelf. So first up is Dark Archives by Megan Rosenbloom. Now this book is a history of anthropodermic bibliopagy. Try saying that 5 times fast. Which is the practice of binding books in human skin. This book asks a lot of questions. Who was interested in having books that were bound in human skin? Who was doing this binding? Who was providing the skin? And how did this practice continue? Rosenbloom is a fantastic tour guide through this very weird and very macabre world. The writing is really sharp, and Rosenbloom is a really, really strong storyteller. So I didn't know anything about this world before diving in, and Rosenbloom takes us on a wild ride and teaches you a ton about something super dark and strange. It really makes you appreciate how many lives touch a single book that you add to your collection, and it makes you want to seek out these books and check one out. Not necessarily add one to your collection, mind you, but just to sort of see them in person. Big recommend to Dark Archives. This is a cool book. It's a recent release, so go check it out. Next up is The Lady from the Black Lagoon by Mallory O'Mara. This is the story of Millicent Patrick, the woman who designed the creature from the Black Lagoon from the classic horror film. Patrick was a trailblazing artist, but her life and her legacy were lost to history and relegated to the shadows. So O'Mara, who is a huge fan of the film and of horror in general, goes out searching for the life and legacy of this forgotten artist and tries to bring it to the surface in this book. I love this book. Not only is it this really affectionate unearthing of a very talented woman's life and career, but it's also O'Mara's story about being an artist in the contemporary horror community and facing similar obstacles that Patrick faced. And she takes these 2 stories, the personal one of hers and the one that she's unearthing for Patrick, and blends them together in a way that is illuminating and really emotionally satisfying. I don't think you can ask for a better tour guide than O'Mara. She's incredibly funny, she's a good storyteller, and she really takes you into this world with such an affection. You can tell that she loves this world and the subject she's writing about. It just sort of oozes off the page, and it makes it a really enjoyable read. I think this book is an empowering book. It is a book that recenters an artist that has been lost to history. And it helps us think about how women are still fighting this good fight today to make places for themselves in creative worlds, business worlds, political worlds, social worlds. And, the fight that Patrick faced is still going on. And I can't recommend this book anymore. It's a lovely book, and if you haven't checked it out, you definitely should. The Lady from the Black Lagoon, Mallory O'Mara. Next up is The Inbetweens by Mira Ptacin. So this book explores the history of Camp Etna, which is the longest running camp in America dedicated to spiritualism and mysticism. So since 1876, Camp Etna has hosted spiritualists and mediums, and Ptacin takes us on this tour of the camp's practices, its history, the major figures that were in it, and how Camp Etna reflected changes in American ideas about faith, American ideas about death and what happens after, and how its history ran parallel to our American history with those subjects. I think this is a book for you if spiritualists and mediums is your thing. It's a deep dive into a weird little kind of like side road of American history, and it's a lot of fun. I think also as well, if you were a history buff, you just like American history, this book is sort of a neat addition to your collection. It does take you down this weird little side road and shows you sort of parts of the American character through kind of a funhouse lens. It's really quite a fun read, so big recommend to The Inbetweens. And finally, we have a book about Bram Stoker. It's called Who Was Dracula by Jim Steinmeyer. There are a lot of books about Dracula and Bram Stoker out there, but this is one of my favorites, particularly because of Steinmeyer's narrative voice and the areas that he particularly chooses to explore. So what Steinmeyer's doing in this book is looking at the creation of Dracula and trying to find parts of Bram Stoker's life that connect to those parts, so that we're seeing Bram Stoker through the lens of the creation of Dracula. Steinmeyer takes us into a lot of cool circles in Stoker's life. Stoker was a really cool dude, and he had this life in the theater where he was working with some of the greats of the British stage. He knew Oscar Wilde. He's got all these famous people in his orbit, and he was in these really interesting communities that he was sort of a peripheral figure in. And Steinmeyer takes us into these very vibrant, very interesting worlds and shows us how his experiences and his relationships in those worlds can be connected out to parts of Dracula. This is a neat book, and if you are a fan of Bram Stoker's Dracula, this is a wonderful companion for that. I think it brings a greater appreciation for Stoker's achievement in Dracula by learning a little bit more about him as a person and how this interesting life that he led informs this book that is a classic of horror literature. It's a lot of fun. Who Was Dracula? Jim Steinmeyer. So that's it. That is Nonfiction for Horror Fans. If you check out any of these 4 books, please leave a comment down below and let me know what you think of them. As always, if you like what's happening here, subscribe to the channel. I would love to continue to build the community of booktubers that I am connected to. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment. Let's talk about horror books, genre books really in general. And, I look forward to seeing you in the next video. So, see you then.